All right, so today I want to talk about babies who are a little bit more flat in the thoracic spine and not as rounded as we'd like them to be. When they're flat in their backs right here, it causes their diaphragm in the front to rise up almost into the stomach itself. So in those babies, we'll see a little bit more reflux tendencies and also maybe tightness in the neck, limited range of motion. And when this area of the spine is affected, would it make sense that also your neck and your low back would have to compensate for the lack of curvature here? For some people it does, and if it doesn't quite make sense, I want to go ahead and explain that to you. So when we're born, we're inside mom and we're in this C-shaped curve. So in mama's belly, baby tucks their chin, hands together, and they are just getting ready for that birth process. When they come out for the first time, they're coming out of the C-shaped curve and they're going into extension in the neck and extension in the low back for the first time in their lives. It is very important that they go into full rotation here, lateral flexion for those babies where the moms choose to breastfeed. Bottle feed is not as difficult for head motion because you can kind of manipulate the bottle where you need it. But even though they're not having challenges with feeding at the bottle, it's still very important for them to understand movement and to be comfortable at their feedings at the breast. So one of the first curvatures we will see develop in the spine is that cervical curve in the neck. So we must have good range of motion in rotation and in lateral flexion. When we achieve that, we will have less compensation coming from this area. So if we're extending nicely here, our bodies, our spines will want to round in the thoracic spine. However, if we are restricted in our range of motion in our neck and we're rounding here, the curvature that neck was supposed to achieve must come from a different area of the back. So the first one underneath it would be your thoracic spine. So wherever the baby is trying to feed and not getting the extension that they want through the neck, they're going down to the little brother spine here, the thoracic spine, and pulling into extension. And watch what happens when this baby pulls into extension. Where do the arms go? Back. The reason we don't want to see this 3-4 months into this baby being here is that 3, 4, 5 months into life, they start to roll. It's very hard for a baby to roll though if their arms are staying pinned underneath them, right? And then once they get to tummy time, they want to stay here. They don't want to let this arm easily come to midline and roll. So that is what this workshop is for. It's to go over what are the things that you can do at home to promote healthy movement in your baby when the problem is too much arching, too little range of motion in the head, neck, thoracic spine, or even the pelvis. So we've understood why we have that C-shaped curve at the birthing process. In the feeding process, whether it's bottle or breast, baby has to come into extension in the neck. Also, it's ideal that they come into extension in the hips too. When we have those dysfunctional movements, you could see head preference one way or the other. Sometimes it's just a little tilt, and those are easier sometimes to take care of than the tilt and rotation. That's usually full on torticollis, okay? So we have to address the physical. I would always prefer to do that, especially babies with reflux, before putting them on proton pump inhibitors, because at that point we know it's not a chemical problem, it's a physical problem. So addressing it from a physical standpoint is obviously ideal, and baby will start to feel better. When the journey of the food starts good, it usually ends good. So when they're feeding well and their latch is beautiful, you are going to see that baby have less gas upon entry. Less upper GI gas leads to less lower GI gas, so less reflux, less colic. When their bodies aren't pulling away from the pain of reflux, now they're arching less. Arms are more able to get in front. So we have to address it from both standpoints. We want good feeds, and we also want to promote good movements. So the first place to start is make it easy. Look at the thoracic spine. Does your baby frequently like to pull back out of extension? Is it really hard to burp that baby? Makes a lot of sense, because if baby's always here and the diaphragm is stuck smushing the stomach, it makes it very hard for that for that air bubble to exit the tummy muscle or the tummy organ. So we're going to start at chin tuck. Can we get that baby to tuck their chin? Little baby here. Make sure baby's eyes are not way up here when you're holding them. Bring that head kind of into a tuck. And when we're doing that, look what we're also achieving. We're achieving being able to bring these arms in front, and you're getting that thoracic curve out of that extension. You're kind of pulling it into a rounded position. If the baby fights you and just goes, ugh, pulls out, go ahead, reset, shake them a little bit, get them more comfortable, and we're just going to practice baby steps. A combination of 15 minutes a day is a lot for a baby. So you can do 5 minutes in the morning of just holding the baby in a rounded position, 5 minutes in the middle of the day, 5 minutes at the end of the day. Train your caretaker, whoever's helping you with the baby most parts of the day. Just let them know, hey, we're working on something pretty specific to our baby's dysfunctional movement. They're going into arch position a lot. We want to help promote them go into more thoracic rounding. Frequently, you'll hear a pediatrician say, tummy time, especially if the baby's got some type of misshapen head or tight neck. But I would also say tummy time is important, but too much tummy time is not ideal for this situation. Plus, babies typically with this problem do not like tummy time. So if that's your baby, perfect, this is for you. You want to start promoting baby to get more on their side with their hips slightly stacked over, and they're naturally going to lay with that shoulder blade coming out underneath them and this top shoulder blade coming out in front. If they want to stay out here, we just have to encourage them to have a toy in front, bring that toy down to where they're tucking their chin again. Like I said, 15 minutes a day is plenty for a baby that is struggling with finding that rounding. So as we optimize the movement in the cervical spine, as we optimize the movement in the thoracic spine to get that rounding, that healthy amount of rounding, you're going to start to see better digestive outcomes. You're going to see less reflux, you're going to see less colic. When we have better digestive health, it's going to lead to easier movements. When we have easier movements, we're going to have easier sleeping patterns, and then it's a cycle. Easy digestion leads to easier sleeps. Easier sleeps lead to easier wait times, a more consolable baby, a more content baby. So they're going to blossom. They're going to live in their parasympathetic nervous system. If they're in their parasympathetic nervous system, they'll rest and digest, which will guide everything else. You could even argue that this is going to improve their immune system, because when they are in their parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, that's also healing. So they can easily jump into an immune response because they're not in fight or flight. I want to go over the movements that you can do at home that we talked about here in this video, but I want to break them down so it's easier for you to work with baby, and you can pause and rewind and pause it and take your time on the areas that you feel like you need extra help on. And if you need anything else, send me a message and we'll work on which specific need that you have for your baby.
Back play is so important for not just them getting used to being on their back and finding their toes, but also another way, even harder way, for them to work against gravity to bring their hands and their limbs midline. I was encouraging this mom here to help baby find their feet by taking off their socks and bringing toes to their mouth. We also just wanted to start incorporating some passive rolling to get baby used to getting their arms underneath their body in that position. So here's tummy time. I know we hear this a lot from our providers that baby needs to be on their tummy as long as possible, as much as tolerated. But we're actually going to switch things up, ironically enough, for the babies that we're talking about here in this workshop in particular. They don't need as much flattening through their thoracic spine as much as they need rounding through their thoracic spine. So we're going to do some tummy time, but we also want to incorporate side play and back play into their little baby movements in their first 3 months. So when we're doing tummy time, let's go ahead and put a bolster under their armpits. They're going to need a little extra help in this movement. This is not going to be most likely their favorite movement, so we're going to do our best to make it as fun as possible. getting mom on the ground with baby, having toys that they can bring their eyes up to the horizon, because we want to encourage their hands and their elbows to go underneath their shoulders. We want to encourage some rounding in the thoracic spine. This baby is a little older than your last baby, so it's going to be a little easier for her, but we're trying to put as many movements into this as possible. It was a cold day, so she came in with socks and pants, but typically when we're doing tummy time, we want to get their skin exposed to the surface that they're on. It just increases the amount of neurons that are firing in their brain. We know that neurons that fire together will wire together, and this is great as they build upon these skills. You can get those arms to start practicing going underneath them, and that's going to also help in recovering the rounding in their thoracic spine. And they'll get used to rolling onto their back. It could be shocking for them at first, so that's why we try to cheer them on. Around the 4-month mark, you're going to start to see baby more so do this on their own, come into a side play, but they might need a little extra practice. So here we're trying to teach her how to tuck that chin, bring her gaze down, get her comfortably relaxing all of her little neck muscles to enjoy being in side play. Because we put them on their side and they're just fighting us the whole time, it's not going to be very enjoyable. But at least they'll get the strength that they need to go into the roll. But if your baby is not comfortable on their side, try your best to take the toy into the field that brings their chin into a slight tuck. And this is going to even more so help those arms come to midline. You can see here I'm stacking one hip over the other, and that's going to cause them to be a little bit more comfortable as well. And there she goes. Now she's got it. Turbo rolling is another great way to incorporate all of the neck flexors and extensors to fire in a more natural way and with more symmetry. It's hard to work one side without working the other when we're taking baby through a full rotation on the floor. And their bodies were meant to develop this way. Their bodies and their minds were meant to develop on the ground before they're able to develop more vertically walking like adults. So the cerebellum loves this. And what's good about this is you can see it's taking his arms into midline. This baby was a baby that had a late start with head rotation and also some head flatness on one side. So he's getting reintroduced to some of those movements. And we want to encourage this toy in front or even lower. Hands go midline. And what's going to happen is he's going to start recruiting left muscles to pick that head up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Tight side down. He's going to recruit these muscles here and here. And you can bring the toy back to get his focus. Okay?
He's looking all the way down.
Watch, keep recording. He's doing great. And then we're going to do some turbo rolling, hips first. And then the hand. We did this before. We're just revisiting it. Good. Hands underneath. And I'm kind of pulling down his pelvis.
Smiling.
By the time they get to 12 weeks, they really do like it. Yay! And then we're going back around. Hands in front. Those shoulder blades coming out because his hands are going midline is so great for whenever he develops sitting muscles. Remember, hips first. And then shoulder. And then everything else. And then hips. And then look at him. He's doing the work on his own. That was great. That was a good one. You did so good. 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 Parents are sometimes afraid to be this rough with their baby because who would want to do this with a 12-week-old? But they love it and they need it. Especially when they had some tightness on one side versus the other.